to you. Good evening to you.
These guys are all big influences on me and certainly house music.
No, that does not sound like a life.
Walk around with that collar popped up.
Yeah.
Hey, do this,
Yeah.
you go over there.
So let's go on that. I want to talk a little bit about each of your illustrious careers, because you guys have done a lot. All three of you have done amazing, have had amazing contributions to what we call house music. This is the Vintage House Show. And so part of what that is about is celebration and preservation. This is Lauren framing, but the celebration and preservation of Chicago house legends and Chicago house music. And I think
All right. It's your main man Mega with another edition of the Vintage House Show, the premier show dedicated to illuminating the lives, the music, the careers, the culture, and the history of this thing called house music. We're powered by the Modern Dance Music Research and Archiving Foundation, the only repository in the United States dedicated to the study, the preservation, and the celebration of house and electronic dance music. Our mission, in short, is to advance the culture, the history, and the business of house music through the collection, archival, storytelling, and exhibition that supports the sustainability of the genre. Our guest is one that I'm very excited for on this episode of the Vintage House Show. It took some correspondence and back and forth, and it's over continents that we were able to coordinate today's episode. And so with that, I'm excited, as I shared, and honored to bring to you a global house influence. His name is Ralf GUM. Welcome, Ralf.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure to be part of what you do and share my past and my history in house music and maybe add a little piece to your work. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for agreeing to join us. And as you may have heard, we're really all about the preservation of the genre and the advancement. And so the reason that you're a guest is because you've been doing quite a bit to help advance house music by creating some amazing tunes. Tell us a little bit from your perspective who Ralf GUM is.
First of all, thank you very much for the kind words about my work. I'm a German guy who just developed interest in actually just obscure music you weren't hearing necessarily on German mainstream radio. And I started looking for more outside of that bubble we were living in, and in some record shops in bigger German cities. I found first different genres which really interested me. It was funk, soul, disco, world music, which you couldn't necessarily get on radio. And I started digging deeper, and especially electronic sounds fascinated me. And I kept on digging and collecting records, and at some point wanted to play that music to someone. So this kind of naturally led me to become a DJ. And in the beginning, I was playing all kinds of electronic or dance genres, I would say. I played a bit of hip hop, early techno, early break beats. And then there was that point where I came across the famous Chicago house samplers. They kind of went mainstream even in Europe, and tracks like Time to Check, which was in your intro, and Chip E and other people. And that was actually my first contact with real house music, I would say, which was end of the 80s. And house music became part of what I enjoyed and liked. And what really changed me was my first trip to New York in I think it was 1992. And I went to all those famous places, which are legendary now, to Louis Wednesdays and to Sound Factory Bar and to Twilo and Checker 60. And this kind of changed my life, because from that point I knew it's really house music and not different electronic music genres, which I want to do and which I want to collect and which I want to play to people. And so after that trip to New York, I told everyone in my hometown I only play house from now on, because this is it. And a lot of people thought I'm crazy, and a lot of people obviously didn't get that vibe, but I just realized it's me, and
Wow.
I kept on doing that, and from there onwards as well wanted to step into production, which luckily a friend of mine owned a studio and allowed me to do my first tries and showed me samplers and other early equipment. And that's where the bug was biting me, and it never left me.
I love the story, because what it embodies, as I listen to you describe, the journey sort of to house music, is it embodies that famous expression in a song or two called "Let There Be House," right? You declared it, you claimed it, and have certainly made an impact and put your stamp on it over the course of your career. So we heard you describe the 80s as sort of the introduction to collecting and doing a little bit of DJing across different genres. In the 90s, after a trip to New York, you said, "Let there be house. I'm only playing house." And your fellow countrymen looked at you strangely and oddly, and that didn't stop. Your production prowess came by way of having a studio owner as a friend, and I need to understand, though, the inspiration. I mean, the soulfulness, the rhythm.
I can't really tell where it comes from, It's in me, and it developed over time further, and it's still developing. But whenever I try to create, and creating is really what I want to do and what I see as my main job, it comes out soulful, I can't change it. It's just something which seems to be in me and which I can't really explain to anyone. I as well don't know why I have what people tell me a instantly recognizable sound. It just developed. And I think as an artist, you need to just let it happen, Best things happen when they happen naturally. That's what I believe.
Been a very organic circumstance, I would say, and your belief is on point. The organic nature of the music that you've made is certainly complemented, of course, by a number of things. I mean, besides being a producer and a DJ, you've been able to be your own label owner, and that means you have an eye and an ear for artistic talent that you've brought along. Tell us a little bit about some of the greats that you've worked with.
Yeah, I started my own label in 2001. I called it GUM Music at that time, not knowing there's actually a music style by the same name. And the main reason was that I still had the feeling, while house music obviously became popular in Europe too, and as well in Germany, and there were a lot of labels, there wasn't really one which was catering for the real soulful US influenced sound, which I was loving so much. And therefore, I wanted to create this platform and had amazing other people releasing on the label, like Rocco and had, or Black Coffee in 2009, had amazing list of remixers, including Chicago's very own Terry Hunter, who worked twice for the label, Louis Vega remixed for the label, and many, many more. And myself, I had the pleasure to just keep on creating and releasing and really working with a lot of amazing talent from all over the world. And this includes some Grammy Award winners like the Soweto Gospel Choir or Yuma Sekela from South Africa. I already mentioned Black Coffee.
Yes.
I had several releases with Monique Bingham from New York, which all had quite some impact, I think, and yeah, many more. So it's a long list. We don't release that much. We believe in quality instead of quantity. And in 20 years, only managed to release 100 singles, which is nothing for other labels. But yeah, a lot of them managed to stand the test of time. And I think it's not about the amount of work you do, but more, yeah, the impact and the quality and what you as well said, to kind of advance the sound. You don't want to sound like in the 90s now anymore, because we are in 2023. So we as well aim to, add new ideas and keep the sound fresh, and not just copy what's there anyway.
I can appreciate that, and I think everyone listening and watching can certainly appreciate that. There's always is a faction that will debate, staying true to the core sound of the four on the floor, percussive, rhythmic, and melodic music. But certainly, technology continues to advance and push the boundaries of what we can do and the sounds we can make and how things come together. Can you talk a little bit about your style and adoption of today's electronic driven musical world?
Um, well, it changed over time, as well. My approach, how I do my beats or whatever I do in studio. I started out in the 90s, and we had limited sample time, like 4 seconds, which had to be enough for beats and maybe a sample and so forth. So there are hardly any limitations anymore. But what I did during the last years is that I pretty much record everything I use. I hardly use samples twice. All my percussions are usually recorded. My bass drums are analog created, and I think this enabled me to, create a kind of own sound identity, because it's me recording the stuff, and So as much as technology advanced, I kind of went back and do most things analog, use the computer only, mainly, not only, to mix and have audio stems in there which come from different analog sources. Your mic is off. I can't hear you.
For the tech folks watching, we certainly appreciate. We're doing more of the sort of geeking out, as we call it, lately, understanding a little bit of the secret sauce of musical greats like yourself. Uh, I really think that the sound, the combination and the approach is certainly working for you. Uh, Tell me about one of your projects. As you noted, a lot of the music has stood the test of time, right? Even though we are looking for and hearing on the dance floor, fresh new sounds. If you were to pick one of your past productions that has really made a difference for you personally in terms of how much you've enjoyed it and how much it excites you when either others are playing it or when you play it. Name one of those songs for me.
I would probably pick "Take Me to My Love," featuring Monique Bingham,
Yes.
because of what that song did for me. Personally, I play some of my songs, but I'm not a big fan of repeating my back catalog in every DJ set because I start boring myself. Like you said, we are looking for fresh sounds on the dance floor.
Yes.
But it's one of them I still can play and I still enjoy, and I chose it because um, it came at a time where my life changed because I moved from Germany to South Africa, and um, I started working on Never Leaves You, the album which included Take Me to My Love in Germany, but I finished the production when I already was here in South Africa. And so it's kind of a transition period for me, and the song blew up in our scene, I think worldwide, but especially here in the country. It was a chart number one for some weeks, official chart number one, and the album went, because of that song, went gold later. So as well, it helped me to establish my name right away after moving here. So that song kind of changed a lot of things at a time where I was in a transition anyway. That's why I picked it.
So I was gonna pick that song as well for me personally, and so we're synced up there. And congratulations on the success of the song and that album,
Thank you.
certainly. Uh, so you talked about that period of transition from Germany to South Africa, and then you spoke earlier also about your fellow countrymen in Germany not necessarily understanding where you were going with your musical journey. Can you talk a little bit about the why in the move to South Africa?
Again, it happened kind of naturally. I was booked in South Africa the first time 2008, heard a lot about the amazing scene here from fellow DJs like Rocco and others who've been here before me, and came here, and it really blew me away because you could hear the most soulful tunes on national radio and house music everywhere, and the gigs were amazing too. So I wanted to come back and was then luckily invited over 2 years to a conference which was happening at that time called the Southern African Music Conference, to conduct some workshops there about production and label management and other things, which opened doors further. And I just fell in love with people, country, mood, weather, and the music scene here. Then my wife started joining me on tours from 2010 onwards, and at some point we just felt like it became home, and we leave home to go back to Germany. And um, at that time my wife still was working at a German company and luckily got a sabbatical, and we said this 1 year we want to use and see and try how it is to live there, because it can be very different if you tour in a country or if you really stay there. And yeah, we just tried it and never looked back. It quickly became our new home, and it as well, talking about the business side, enabled me to change what I did before, because I didn't have to travel that much anymore to have enough gigs to sustain, and it enabled me at the same time to do more music and be more at home, which I'm very thankful for. Um, and yeah, therefore it was a great move, but it never was planned like this. And I think you can't intend certain things, you just have to try them and hope they work out.
I love the organic nature of it all, and curious about before you were able to perform as a DJ with the multiple gigs and build your production business. What did you do before that? Did you have a different career?
So I studied civil engineer, and during the studies, I mainly used my time to look for music or be in the studio of my friend. And after studying, I still couldn't sustain with music. Therefore, my parents said I should rather go work, but I chose to start another study just to gain time. And during those 2 additional years where I studied economics, the career slowly took off, and I had residencies in my hometown, which then enabled me to really focus on music. And while being in Germany, I did the same. I produced music and I was DJing. I was traveling much more than nowadays. And yeah, really sustains mainly still through residencies in my hometown, which I played weekly if I didn't have gigs somewhere. So what I did never changed. It's just that it feels like it became easier because the amount of traveling became less.
I I really understand the issue around traveling. I would certainly
I
comment.
yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I
No,
still
no.
love doing that. I still play gigs in Europe.
Okay.
But what I stopped enjoying is steadily being on the road and not being able to really recover in between. And I'm no one who really can work on the road. The way I work and create my music needs the studio, which is at
Mm,
home. So therefore, it's I still appreciate all those gigs, don't get me wrong, but it's
yes.
cool to in between have periods where you just can play in your country, and you travel 1 hour to a gig and you don't have intercontinental flights, which really are exhausting.
I hear you, Ralph, and certainly can appreciate that. I've not had the opportunity to travel internationally for touring support, but certainly domestic travel can be just as exhausting. Speaking of which, I've heard European and South African uh, tour stops, and New York. You spent time. What about Chicago?
It never worked out. I was speaking with different people for different occasions. Last time I spoke with Terry Hunter because I was in Toronto. But that already was beginning of COVID and lockdowns, and then it fell flat again. So it wasn't supposed to happen yet, but I hope it will come soon or later.
We certainly hope it happens soon as well. Chicago, of course, being the birthplace of house music, is a it's an opportunity to certainly become immersed in some of the culture and the
Yeah, it would,
sociological
yeah, it
impact.
would be an honor to, play in the birthplace of the music, which I do my whole life, of course. Um, but yeah, the states are as well complicated with work visas and so forth.
Of course.
So it's not the easiest task to just come and play. I think you need multiple gigs, a little tour to make it happen. To fly there for one gig as well is not economic, not for the promoter and not for the DJ. So it has to happen at the right time, and I always believe the right time will come.
Well, I understand clearly all those logistics, right, that are required. It's not such an we've used the term a lot today, organic. It can't be just organic. It has to be very well planned out. And so hopefully those listening and watching, and perhaps even my colleagues and I, will work to make that happen one day. And so
That would be
following
lovely.
along the same lines, you certainly indicated you've worked with a friend of this show and a friend of mine, Terry Hunter, and others in Chicago. Uh, there are an abundant number of talented DJs, remixers, producers, and artists here in Chicago. I'm sure you've thought about it. Who else here would be someone you'd be open to working with?
Like you said, a lot of talented artists. I think you had him on the show too. Kelly G is on fire at the moment. Immaculate is amazing, which is as well, the Terry family somehow. But there are so many more. Um, I can't really pick one big person.
I know I put you on the spot, and I don't usually do that, but I could envision, there's some incredible female vocalist here, and I'm certainly a huge fan of the combination of you and Monique Bingham and what you've done there. I could envision, right, you working with some of Chicago's amazing female vocal talent and putting that together. So I'm gonna work on that with you.
Tell me the name.
Will do. So in South Africa, I want to talk a little bit more about South Africa. Moving from Chicago now to South Africa, what you said really struck me, and that was the fact that when you were touring South Africa and spending time and exploring whether or not it would be a place for you and your family, house music permeated the airways, right? It was commercial radio, and house music was what you were hearing, and that made a big difference. Talk about why that's important. House music started sort of underground, had a little light in Chicago on mix shows here, but I'm curious, and I think many of us know, the more spins and rotation a song gets, right, the more popular and endearing it becomes if it's quality music. But from your perspective, what is it about hearing house music all the time that makes such a big difference?
It doesn't have to be necessarily all the time, but just that it is on national platforms means that pretty much everybody gets in contact with it, while in Europe and the States, it's often only people who go to clubs or really search for specialist shows and listen to specialist shows who get in touch with the music. So it means many more people get in touch with it, and if only some of them like it, you create a much more listenership for the music, which is, of course, what we want. We do make music so that people can listen, and the sheer amount of sources which play house music or played house music to you in the country made sure everybody comes in contact with it, and therefore it created a lot of house music lovers. It's quite simple. So the more airplay we have, the more popular our music hopefully becomes, and or not hopefully becomes,
Yeah,
and yeah, it works in our advantage.
absolutely. For those that uh, may aspire to be like a Ralf GUM, what advice would you share with them in terms of
Um,
production, DJing, record label ownership?
I I believe talking about production or music in general, it's fine to be inspired by someone when you start out. Um, and maybe as well copying a groove or whatever, but along the way you need to be you. Um, I can't be Harry Hunter and I can't be Louis Vega. I only can be myself, Ralf, and it's the same for everyone. For an artist, the most important thing is, yeah, to be yourself and do yourself. While on the other side, for a label, obviously it helps to be um, organized, and it requires different other talents. So yeah, I just believe, as for music, you need to find your own path, and you can be inspired by others, but at some point you need to, yeah, create your own way.
Uh, couldn't agree more with you, Ralph. And um, that signature, right, that each individual producer and remixer has certainly helps with the brand building and the following that occurs as they deliver music that influences the dance floor. Can you talk a little bit about when you play, right, and on some of these tour dates, talk about the size and scope of the dance floor, which is in some cases a stadium floor, right?
Mm. Yeah, no, I find it quite interesting to play for all different settings. It can be a restaurant with 30 people sitting on a Sunday afternoon where I play a bit more loungy and relaxed and maybe some broken beats. And it, on the other hand, can be stadiums. I think the biggest crowd I played to was 30,000 people, which is the size of your famous chosen few picnic. We have a few of those big size events which aren't all only house music, but all contain at least a big amount of house music and house music sets. And it's both very interesting. I personally prefer a smaller, tight club where I can connect with people, 200 people, and have a great sound system. But to try and get 30,000 people going is a different challenge. And so it's interesting to have those changes, and it's amazing to play to those big crowds, obviously, too.
I I understand certainly the variations, and uh, it comes sort of through trial and error, right? The opportunity to learn how to play for those 30 to 40,000 versus the lounge environment, which is
Yeah.
more intimate and small.
Yeah.
And so
Usually on those festivals with big crowds, you don't play really long sets. I would say 1 hour sets max, sometimes only 45 minutes. So obviously you build your set completely different because you can't create that slow building up and down journey you maybe would create in a club where you play for hours, and you as well would play very different from people sitting in a restaurant, of course. So yeah, it's a different challenge, and um, I believe a good DJ is able to adapt without changing his sound and signature, by just you just play a bit different, but the same music.
yes, yes, indeed. The and the opportunities, to play that wide variation of venues. Uh, I'm assuming that you've got an artist management team or a booking agency that you work with. Can you tell us a little bit
We,
about
we,
how
we,
that works?
yes, I had different solutions during my career. And it went back to the very organic and very simple one that my wife does most of the office work, regarding the label accounting, and as well regarding my bookings. So she does the contractual and invoicing stuff, and it makes things very easy because she sits in the room next door or upstairs, and it's easy to communicate, and she knows exactly what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And yeah, so we are a family team, and that's it.
It doesn't get much better than that, right? Having a family business, and what a business it is. What's your favorite part if you were to choose between, you know, the label, DJing, performances, or production in the studio? Where do you find
Easy,
yourself spending the most time?
easy choice. Production first and label last. The label work is nothing which really is fun to me or excites me, and um, it's just necessary to get the music out there. It's the work part, and the more my wife can take over from it, the happier I am because I have more time for studio. So clearly production, while I obviously don't want to miss DJing, the interaction with people, and those magic nights which happen not all the time, but from time to time. You don't want to miss them if you have the DJing in your heart.
Yes, indeed. The magic of playing for an audience is amazing. They give you energy. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about the energy you get? How does that sustain you, uh, especially with a late night set?
Um, Late night sets are very interesting. Unfortunately, the regulations in South Africa changed some years ago, and most places now close at 2 a.m., which means we don't have those real after hour feelings and parties anymore. And sometimes I'm missing that feeling. At the same time, people adjusted to it, go out just a bit earlier, and then a 1 o'clock set feels like late night. Um, but yeah, it's what gets us all going and keeping on. I think it's the energy the music gives and the happiness it gives to people, and seeing people connect with the music and just enjoying the time is worth it all.
So you shared a little bit about some of the change that occurred for you during the pandemic. we're still, this isn't totally a thing of the past. And so I'm curious about how you spent time during the pandemic. Were you doing some of the online streams or spending most of your time producing? What was it
Yeah,
like?
so in the beginning of the pandemic, it was like a big question mark. What are we doing? How long will it take? Will we be able to survive without what we were able to do before? And I decided from the beginning I want to invest most of my time into production because it is what kept me going and all my life, I would say. And for me, it was a logical decision to first try and do as much music as I can. And if it would have failed, then think about a second solution. Luckily, the lockdowns haven't been that long in South Africa, and here we are completely out of the this topic now. COVID is no topic anymore, at least at the moment, since some months.
Yes.
And we are back to normal. It worked out during those 2 years. Obviously, the income isn't the same if you only create and release music. Everybody in the scene knows that.
Yes.
So it was tough. I worked hard, but I made the conscious decision to focus on music and not invest my time in too much time in other things. I think I did in the beginning, I did 2 streams from my studio. One of them as well was broadcasted on a TV channel here. For the TV channel, they lost interest. They did different DJs every week.
Yes.
And I asked myself, why am I streaming now out of my studio while I could rather create music being there? And yeah, so I didn't do too many of them, and luckily it worked out because we all didn't know in the beginning what to exactly do and what's the best way forward.
No, absolutely. And here in the States, the streaming phenomena sort of lowered the barrier to entry, as DJs who have been maybe historically bedroom DJs or basement DJs, whichever your preference of location, um, began to get some visibility. They still had to promote themselves and ensure that they could build an audience, but again, quality leads to that organic growth. So it's interesting, that it might not have become a worldwide phenomena, but it was certainly something that helped sustain things here in the U.S. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think about the
It's
future?
not only in the US as well here. A lot of established DJs, especially
Yeah.
those who don't necessarily produce too much, but DJ as their main profession, streamed, and it worked well for them. And as well,
Okay.
new brands came up which nobody knew before. So that, and it helped, keeping the music out. And it was interesting to see. There's always waves in what's popular and what not. No matter country you look, and as in South Africa, house music has its up and downs. And
Yeah.
before the pandemic, it was really kind of down, and Amapiano was the sound which took a lot of the people. And interestingly, through the pandemic, a lot of people came back to house music because it's substantial music, and as well sitting at home you still can enjoy it, I believe, unlike some other genres which you only want to hear in a club.
Yes. That's fair. And
So
um,
coming out of the pandemic, I feel house music has a big revival in the country, especially the soulful sound. And I would say the peak of house music really was in the country 2012 to 2014, 15, and now we are really on the way back to a
It's
very
prominent.
healthy
Yes.
scene. Yes.
That's interesting. 2012 to 2014 was a period of vibrancy for the genre, and now coming out of the pandemic, 2022 2023 here, it's great to hear whenever it continues to reach its potential and reach the masses, as you shared earlier about your comment about radio. And so our show, interestingly enough, a quick plug for it, we've been capturing these first person stories for the past 8 years. So we've got a great set of stories about you know the work that people have been putting in and investing uh, in the creation and sustainability of the genre, about some of their own personal stories of how they came to the music. And thank you for sharing your story about that. I'm curious now, a lot of people do put in hard work, and like many things, besides sales and listenership and reactions from the dance floor, there's also this thing hanging out there of awards. Um, I'm not sure exactly when our show will air, but we just came off of the Grammy Awards, the National Association of Recording Arts and Sciences here in the U.S. It's sort of the crown jewel for a lot of musicians and performers. What do you think about you know awards and having music recognized and acknowledged in that fashion?
I think it's great again for house music. I don't even have followed if Terry Hunter, who was nominated, now won or not. Um, I'm not sure, but the nomination is a great thing for house music in general.
It was a
And
win
last
for
year,
sure. The nomination was a win. Terry did not
yes,
win that category
okay.
with
But
the
still, the
award, but
nomination
he,
is a big win for house music. And we
yes,
had, I think, Louis Vega last year winning Best Remix, if I'm not mistaken. And was it as well last year or the year before where Black Coffee got?
I think
Um,
Black Coffee was last year, yes, and
yes.
Louis the year before.
So it's additional platforms and additional ways where house music is recognized. And I think it's important for us to not only stay in our scene, but as well to get new people into the scene, young people interested into the music, to have new generations listening to hopefully, advanced kind of house music. They don't necessarily need to, they should know their classics from the 90s, but like I said, the music should as well progress. And it's therefore it's amazing if house music or house music producers get award nominations and get awards. I've never been lucky enough to receive one. Um, Mostly in South Africa. I haven't been able to because I'm still a German living in South Africa, and it will be South Africans who deserve and get the awards, which is totally okay and fine for me. At the same time, I'm too far from Germany to get an award there, and I've never been lucky enough to maybe do something which got a Grammy nomination or another award. So I think in general, it's good if our music is out there and gets that recognition. Personally, for me, I feel fulfilled as long as I can do what I want and can continue to do house music. And if house music's popularity is created through nominations of other people in the scene, I'm still happy for, all of us who are in the industry.
Wonderfully shared, Ralph. I really think that your humility in talking about what the expression um, a high tide lifts all boats is the expression, which really means that if someone from the house community is nominated and awarded, then the house community certainly reaps the benefits of that reward. And
Yeah,
so
I think it's important that we all understand that we live in one ecosystem. House music is one ecosystem with a lot of people in there and a lot of players. And if everybody works together, that system grows. If everybody works against each other, we don't benefit from it. So I think it should be a logic um, thought. But thank you very much.
yes, it should be natural and organic, but because sometimes it's not perceived to be mainstream, often there's this clamoring for a slice of the house music pie, but the pie can be as big as we make it, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. It's only about us to grow it. No one else will grow it for us because we love it, and so therefore we need to grow it, and as well need to get new and more people into the scene. And we shouldn't mind if newcomers come up and take some gigs or spots or sales ranks in on Traxsource. It's good if good music is released and good talent is,
Say
kept in our
say
scene.
that again for the audience, right? It's great if good music hits. Yes. I love that. And so in the final 5 minutes or so we have together, I certainly want to get an exclusive out of you, if I can, about any new projects or new releases that you have coming out, or anything that you'd like to, share with our audience to help promote and encourage, support for.
Yes, after working for many, many years only on albums, I released 4 albums after each other. And once I finished one, I started a new album. And I did this for more than 10 years. I got a bit tired of it and focus on singles at the moment. And will continue to do so at least for 2023 before I maybe start a new album. My next release is almost finished, but I don't know a release date yet. It will be with South African singer Ayanda Chia. Um, and I have a few more playbacks which are currently with vocalists. I can't tell you release dates yet, but I can tell you that I'm doing something for Foliage Records for a change, not only for Gogo Music, as well for another label. And I gave a playback to Kia Stewart. I'm
Yeah.
waiting to hear from her. Very excited. I think her writing is amazing. Um, I'm waiting for Monique to work on a new playback I sent her a while ago. And so I just keep on doing music and sending. And as I get vocals back, I will finish the songs and release them. The only one I know is the one with Ayanda Chia I mentioned. It will be called Special. And I hope it will be out in March, but I'm not sure yet.
Very good. Well, we certainly look forward to that release. Can't wait. March is coming soon, though. We're only a month away.
Yep.
Um, Certainly, I know that, as you mentioned, TrackSource and Beatport are places where people can get your music. Any other social platforms where people who are fans of Ralf GUM can interact and engage with you?
Yes, I'm of course on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm as well on TikTok, but not very often. I have to admit, it's somehow just not my platform, I guess. But yeah, you find me on all four of them if you look for Ralf GUM. You as well can go to my website, which is ralfgum.com. And of course, we have a label website, gogo-music.net too, where you find the label releases and related news.
Excellent. Any other parting words that you want to share with the Vintage House audience?
No, it's just a great pleasure to be on that show and be called part of house history. I mean, I said it before, it's my life, and it's good that you, as well in Chicago, recognize that work I did. I really appreciate that, and I hope we make a party in Chicago happen.
Absolutely. We're going to make a party happen and a collaboration with some of our great talent here. We're going to figure it out, Ralph.
Cool.
It's been a pleasure hosting you on this episode of the Vintage House Show. We are live every Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Central Standard Time on WNUR.org, WNUR 89.3 FM, twitch.tv, The Vintage House Show. And of course, you can tune in anytime and anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast at The Vintage House Show. Ralf GUM, thank you very much for spending this time with us. Continued success. We do look forward to those upcoming releases and getting you here to Chicago, the home of house music. And then if the Vintage House Show gets over to South Africa, we'll definitely look to connect with you.
Yeah, that we should work on both ways. Yes.
We shall.
Thank you very much for having me, Kevin. Great pleasure, and I wish you and all the listeners the best.
Thank you, Ralph.